Celtics Beat is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
What's up, everyone? New edition of Celtics Beat. Adam Kaufman here. No Evan Valenti. If you are watching or if you're listening, we'll hear from Evan over the course of the show in part, but not contributing in the way that he typically does. Prior engagement today. That's okay. We'll miss him. We'll catch up with him for the next show. It is me. It is Sean Devaney. And Sean, I did it again. I even hesitated for anyone that listened to the audio version of our little introduction. Doesn't come with the video, but I in the moment, is it heavy basketball writer Sean Devaney? Is it heavy.com basketball writer Sean Devaney? Because I don't, it sounds insulting when I leave out the .com, but you are spry and you're looking good.
Well, I don't know about that, but I appreciate it. You certainly do give me a complex every time I come on, Evan. I'm sorry, Adam. Just go.
We don't there you go.
That's my revenge.
Or affiliations or anything like that around here. To add to the confusion, and I will only let people behind the curtain to this degree in the event that it still happens at some point. I had promised on Twitter a few days ago, we've got this amazing first-time guest on Celtics Beat coming up for the next show. While you are an amazing guest, absolutely, you are certainly not a first-time guest of this program. Right. So that has been postponed. We will reschedule, I hope. And I hope to, for the listeners who are like, well, what's the deal? I hope to have that coming for you very soon. But we, in many ways, are actually getting a better situation in terms of just the timing of this, because I will tell you that person who was going to join us is not in Las Vegas at Summer League. And Sean Devaney is in Las Vegas at Summer League. So tell me a little bit, just before we get into obviously what's been going on with this team since the last time you came on this show. What is the atmosphere out there? I saw Chris Forsberg posting picture after picture of it's Jason Tatum everywhere. Like the signage. The Celtics are well represented out west.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And, it's amazing because I've been covering Summer League for 23, 24 years now. I think back to, LeBron James made his debut in Boston in Summer League at the Shaw's Summer League at UMass Boston. And I remember about 250 people in the gym when LeBron made his debut. I'm sure now, if you ask people, then they'll say that, there's probably about 50,000 that claim to have been there, but there were not that many. But now, man, it is crazy here. It is crazy here. Obviously, Wemby has brought a lot of excitement, maybe more off the court than on the court. But yeah, there's they continue to build this thing, and it's pretty crazy. What this has become compared to where it was when it started in Vegas like 12, 13 years ago, and certainly where Summer League was when it first was really going, back when I was covering it for the first time.
Well, and you mentioned the Summer League kind of hype train, obviously, like what could have and should have been with LeBron if it was the pomp and circumstance that it is now. We'll talk about Jordan Walsh, but that's a different kind of hype train. That's like Celtics Summer League, green pom-pom holding, that kind of hype train. The real hype train, obviously, as you mentioned, is Wemby. And what is interesting, and I don't think it means anything. I'm not making any sort of declarative statements, but it was sort of fun in a way. I don't know if that's the right word, but sort of fun after the fact to see just the social media reaction to his first Summer League game, where it was, I saw people saying, who were there in person, that's the worst Summer League debut I've ever seen. I saw some people like celebrating that they had already gotten their bets in on Scoot Henderson for Rookie of the Year because the line movement after the fact was so drastic after that first Wemby performance. It just seemed awkward, out of place, didn't totally know what he was doing. And I'm not going to beat the guy up. Like it's his first, again, Summer League experience and even pseudo professional experience. But what did you make of that? Were you caught off guard?
Yeah, I was, it's impossible to call it anything other than disappointing. If you want to say, well, it's summer league, he's exhausted. They had played their postseason. You can come up with any number of excuses, but you're coming up with excuses in order to cover for what was a huge disappointment. I mean, when you come into summer league with the hype that he's had, you expect certainly a level of dominance among the other, like Paolo Banchero when he played last year, and you just watched him in that first game. It was like, I don't think he's going to play again in the summer league. He's shown all he needs to show. That's it. You did not get that from Wemby, and certainly if Banchero was here when he was coming in, Wemby's way up here. So it was a disappointment. There's no other way to describe it. And I actually watched last night. I watched his teammate Koulibaly, who the Wizards took, and he was worse. If you thought Wemby's was disappointing, I was watching Koulibaly, and he just didn't not look like he knew what he was doing on either end of the floor. He's supposed to be this great defender, did not look like it to me. So yeah, I mean, obviously, look, it's one summer league game. You put it in that context, but that's all we've got so far, and so far not very impressive.
Well, so I say this, or I ask this, not looking for a hot take, just truly like your reasoned opinion of decades of watching basketball and seeing prospects, and those that have obviously met expectations, exceeded expectations, and those who have failed, and we look back on as draft busts. I'm not saying Wemby is going to be bad or anything less than great. We couldn't possibly know that after one summer league game, but in seeing that, did it at least occur to you, did the thought cross your mind, like, man, did we get it wrong with this guy?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And again, you just think of like Keegan Murray last year at just to use last year as another example at summer league. It was obvious. You just watched him, you saw this is an NBA player who's going to come in and contribute. And certainly what he did in the summer league was not comparable to what he did in the regular season, but he played, and he was an important part of that Kings team that took a step forward. It's you don't see that right away from this guy. And if we're going to hype him up as the next best thing to LeBron James in terms of prospects, you'd expect some level of dominance coming into summer league, and we just didn't see that. And so, yeah, you do have to wonder, is this, if he's a project, okay, maybe he develops into whatever he's going to develop into later. But he was certainly not sold as a project. He was not, I was not told that this was going to be a project. I was told that this was going to be a guy who was going to be a star right away. And we'll see. He's got time to certainly turn that around and to show some more as he goes forward. But yeah, it's got to at least cross your mind that maybe he is not going to live up to what he was. What he's been billed as.
So this, I swear, this won't be a Wemby podcast, people, if you're listening. But I'm fascinated by this, at least to some degree. What do you attribute it to? Because he's a big, for his frame, lanky guy. He's and most of these guys, when they're this age, like Jason Tatum was a lanky guy when he came into the league. He filled out. Most of these guys do fill out. Now he's a different story. For a Wemby, you'd look for him to fill out in the way that a Yao Ming filled out. Like he's never going to be this like muscle bound whatever. But I don't know. Is it frame, or was it basketball IQ? Like what do you attribute the whole project versus ready to go element?
Yeah, and I think I do want to be careful in that, look, he could, like I say, he could turn this around really fast. I think part of it was he came in wanting to show he's a team guy and not wanting to, come out and take 25 shots and try to just run all over the place and dominate everything. Maybe that changes going forward. But I think that was part of it. He seemed to be, too willing to sort of blend in and not enough to put his imprint on what was going on. So I think part of that is just his approach coming in. From everything that I've heard, his IQ is good, and his work ethic is good. I don't think he came in trying to be lazy or thinking that this is going to be easy for me. I don't think it was anything like that. But I do think that if you're a Spurs fan and you're looking for something, then I think that maybe he was just being a little too passive.
All right. Well, if you fast forwarded through the first 5 minutes of this show and on through the Wemby mania, let's talk Celtics and summer league action. The first game is in the books. Who cares about the outcome? Like that doesn't matter in these games, although it was a loss to Miami. And I think that, probably hits a little close to home for people after the playoffs, but nevertheless, the real excitement to come out of it obviously was a guy with no hype train whatsoever, a second-round pick, Jordan Walsh, who the Celtics traded down multiple times to get this guy, or at least, traded off picks and wound up with this guy. I don't think they were necessarily targeting him. Even Brad Stevens said at the time there were a handful of guys, sort of that we liked in that general range of picks, and he was one of them. It wasn't like, oh my God, we wanted Jordan Walsh. Well, people started reading about him and watching some of the videos obviously from previous play, and there was a little bit of excitement build. People were starting to get into the whole Marcus Smart light thing in terms of energy and effort and enthusiasm. But what people really were not banking on, the hype was the defense. People were not banking on the offense. And in his summer league debut, just to reach the stat line, 18 points on 6 of 11 shooting, but 4 of 6 from 3. And it's not like he was just lucking into these shots. He actually has a beautiful stroke. It was a beautiful shot out there. So even if they weren't going in, just the form is very good. 5 rebounds, couple of steals, had a block as well. Tied his career high at Arkansas, I guess, in terms of the 18 points. So again, not this prolific college scorer by any stretch, but a guy that, needless to say, again, it's summer league hype. Who the hell knows what the regular season will bring, other than I feel and I guess, like, look, it was me, like, for the people biting back in the comments previous shows when I said I'm not even positive this guy is going to be on the roster. I saw him as more of a two-way guy that would get time in Boston, but like JD Davison would spend a fair amount of time in Maine as well with those Celtics. I think for CBA reasons, roster reasons, and play, at least early on, seems like this is a guy who is going to be a full-time Celtic this coming year. And obviously he didn't get the two-way contract either. So, I expect to see him on Boston's roster and maybe even contributing to this rotation. Did he surprise you, what you saw in that first game?
Yeah, he did. Certainly if you look at what he showed at Arkansas, I think you could see the defense and the intensity, and that he was a guy who coaches like. I know his coach Eric Musselman pretty well, because Muss was a coach in the NBA for a while. And one thing that he said is that he did not get to show what he could do offensively. They had Anthony Black, they were a stacked team, so he did not get to do much offensively, but he certainly earned his spot on that Arkansas team. So and one thing Musselman said too is that he's a better shooter than he showed. He shot, I think it was 28% from the 3-point line at Arkansas, and didn't really get, because in the college game, you play 30 games. If you have a slump for 4 or 5 games, that's it. Your number tanks in terms of your 3-point shooting. Everybody thinks you can't shoot, but he's a guy who's a much better 3-and-D prospect for the NBA. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what he can do, and certainly I do think he has a spot in the roster, and will be a promising young guy that Joe Mazzulla won't play. So we got that. we got something to complain about next year. Is why isn't he getting any minutes? So Celtics fans have that to look forward to for sure.
Is it? Well, that depresses me right off the hop, but you're probably right. It's funny. I don't look at, maybe I should, but Joe, I feel like hasn't, for me anyway, he hasn't been around long enough to have that, like, won't play the young guys reputation. He can really build into that, like Doc, he can really earn that over the course of time. Yeah, I guess there weren't even that many young guys last year that he could have played. Obviously, like, Grant's not a young guy, fell out of the rotation. Peyton really never got an opportunity, but I wouldn't call him a quote unquote young guy anymore. He's been around. So it's like the JD Davisons of the world or somebody like that. But I guess that sort of transitions us to, what does this look like going forward, and are the Celtics done? Because depending on who you ask and what talking head is out there doing a radio, TV, podcast interview, everybody has a different perspective. Mine has been, I've been pretty vocal about it. Maybe I'll be wrong, but my perspective has been Brad's not done. And when I say Brad's not done, I mean in a meaningful way. I feel like Brad is not done. For instance, I believed, much like many other people, Grant Williams was going to be sent elsewhere in a sign and trade. I did not envision that, 2 second-round picks coming the other way. I thought they'd actually get somebody who might play for them, a human being, not a future asset. But I still have it in my head that they are working diligently to try and get off of Malcolm Brogdon's contract. And that obviously is considerable money that you can turn into another body coming in. And you'd have to, quite frankly, based on, the another hole that would leave you with. I don't feel like the roster composition makes a whole hell of a lot of sense right now. And again, vet minimum guys or whatever could be added, or whatever they decide to do, that maybe fixes this up a little bit. But I've taken a lot of flack, Sean, on social media or on this podcast for saying that I believe that this team is not, as we sit here today, better than it was when the season ended. I believe that. A lot of people scoff at it. These are the people, I think, who underrate the contributions of Grant Williams and Marcus Smart, and overrate what we saw in 1 year from Kristaps Porzingis last year, and just expecting that durability and that production to be there again this year. I'm very skeptical of that. So that's a wide-ranging way.
Yeah, I should have been writing this down, Adam.
It's a wide-ranging way of saying to you, how do you evaluate this roster right now, and what do you think happens going forward?
Yeah, so starting with the Brogdon thing and whether they have something there or can get something there, I think that was probably something they wanted to do before the Grant Williams thing shook out. Because, when you look at how that shook out, they couldn't take back Reggie Bullock, who is a very serviceable NBA player, good 3-and-D guy, somebody who probably would play for the Celtics and could fill sort of that Grant Williams role a little bit, and maybe do it with a little more versatility. But they couldn't do that because of the luxury tax and the second apron and all that. If they had moved Brogdon before that, and created a little room, then they could have done something with that Grant Williams contract, but they weren't in a position to do that because of the timing thing. So they could certainly try to move off of Malcolm Brogdon. I just, you've got to be able to find somebody who's going to contribute in doing that, and that's going to be a little bit of a challenge. But I still think that they could use help on the wing, and that's been pretty consistent. I agree with you about Porzingis. I think that he had the best year of his career last year. But you're bringing him in and you give him a couple more years on a contract, and that's always been his thing, is that he's going to get injured, especially once you pay him. So that's certainly a concern. And I think the other thing that really does concern me is that Porzingis has a real sort of laid back approach. And that's fine. That's his personality. But that's also Jaylen Brown's personality a little bit. And that's Jason Tatum's personality a little. Who's the guy who's going to bring the fire, they don't seem to have that, with Marcus Smart and Grant Williams gone. They don't really seem to have that. So that's another concern for me. I'd like to think that they're not done. I think they shouldn't be done. I just don't know what else is out there for them that's going to significantly change the roster and make you say, okay, now we're good. And one last thing on this, Adam, is that who in the East improved themselves? Who else got better? Milwaukee added Malik Beasley, who I think, so that's a good pickup for them. But that's pretty much it. Until
Miami gets Dame.
Even if Miami gets Dame, does that scare you? You know what I mean? Does Damian Lillard, Adebayo, and Butler? I mean, that's a tough series, obviously, but they're beatable. I mean, I
wouldn't have much else around them either. I know we got to tell the people, why we're here in the first place.
We're here in the first place because we're powered by FanDuel, and we're going to take a break to tell you today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel. We'll get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right, just $20. And you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. It's $200 you can spend betting on everything from the money line to over-unders to parlays to first home run of the game to this. Nobody's going to score in this inning. It's an amazing plethora of options for you at FanDuel, and it's all in that app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. FanDuel makes it so easy to bet on NBA, MMA, tennis, golf, and of course, Major League Baseball. It's America's #1 sportsbook that is FanDuel. So sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball.
Exactly right, and that's the real thing is that you'd make them probably the favorites in the East. There might be even favorites with the Celtics, but Philadelphia, what they're going through, the Knicks I thought had opportunities to get better, and they might still yet, if depending on what happens on the trade market. But there's I don't see anybody in the East who really got significantly better, and I think so for the Celtics, there's a lot to be concerned about, but I think the bigger issue is, okay, well, who else is really going to win the East if not them? It's really still theirs for the taking.
So I want to talk out of both sides of my mouth with this one, or at least acknowledge both sides, I guess, where some of the stuff we've talked about on this show versus some of the comment or feedback. And I think you can make an argument on both sides. We've had, you just said it, Washburn's been on the show and said it, the whole, like Washburn made the comp that, you need a Marcus Smart type, a Draymond Green type in terms of that fiery personality, that someone's got that dog in them, someone who's, that mental toughness, all of that to win a championship, to get you over the hump. Like, you need that guy on your roster. And I agree with you. I think they, at least outwardly, I have no idea what happens behind closed doors, but outwardly, what we see, or even what we see on the court, I think in many ways, the Celtics did trade their two most mentally tough guys in Marcus Smart and Grant Williams, and that guy right now, unless Tatum elevates in that way, or some of these other guys further like Al Horford's never going to become that. Jaylen Brown's not going to become that. If these guys, if some of these guys do become that, or bring some more of that, I don't know, maybe that cancels out in a way, but you really had an extreme with Smart, and to a certain degree Grant Williams, who obviously, and I don't say this in a negative way, I actually say it in a complimentary way, like someone who just never shut up, who was just like always talking, always kind of wanted to let he was there. And I mean on the court, and that could backfire with the whole, like, I'm going to hit 2 free throws and that sort of thing. But so that's one side. The other side, and this, we got a lot of this in the comments, was, all right, well, so you lost those two guys, but how mentally tough were you in the first place when you laid an egg against the Warriors in the finals, when that series was there for the taking, when you took longer than expected to beat the Hawks, took longer than expected to beat the Sixers, fell down 3-0 against Miami, only to rally to tie the series and then get blasted at home in Game 7. All this mental toughness we're talking about, where was it? So how much is that really hurting you with those guys gone? So I'll throw that to you. Does it really matter? Do we overvalue some of that stuff?
Well, I mean, ask Milwaukee, right? I mean, the Celtics got to the conference finals and stormed back from after being 3-0 and forced a Game 7. Where was Milwaukee at that time? That's not a very mentally tough team. They lost to the Heat in the first round. I mean, so you can imagine that the Hawks could have eliminated the Celtics in that first round. as well, or they could have lost to the Sixers. So I do think I mean I take your point, but at the same time I think that you're a lot more open to a huge disappointment if you don't have any of that mental toughness. Then at least if you have it, then you can fight back from some of the holes that you dig yourself into. And again, I'd say the fact that they dug themselves into those holes is part of the problem.
I had made the comment a couple shows back that if there was one sort of saving grace for me, and I'm in the Marcus Smart fan camp, like I realize he's as polarizing a Celtic as there has been in a long time, and in fact, Boston sports, athlete in general, as polarizing a figure as there's been in quite a while. And I was on the side that appreciated Smart and wanted Smart to be here, and there were a lot of people that celebrated like hell when he was traded away, and there was kind of no in between. So with for those of us that were on the you like to have Smart here side of things, the saving grace that I took from the trade was now he can't be the punching bag. Now, if things go wrong, people can't look to him and say, well, that's because Smart took the last second shot, or that's because Smart took 10 threes in this game, or that's because Smart committed this dumb foul, or that, people can't point at that anymore. And what I thought was interesting was I was reading Himmelsbach the other day, and he had a bunch of his news and notes from Vegas. And one of them was that the organization was happy. I don't remember exactly how he wrote it, but the general point was, there was a curiosity about, okay, like it was the Jays team before, but now it's really the Jays team, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, because even they internally, it felt like at times were a little deferential to Smart in bigger moments, or even internally. Now they have to lead. They have to take charge. Smart isn't there to bail them out in some ways. What do you think of that? What do you think of them ascending to where people have wanted them to be for years?
Well, I mean, I don't like the fact that they had to be kicked in the pants to get there. You know what I mean? Why would you be deferential to Marcus Smart? A, and then B, you can have more than one loud guy. You know what I mean? You can have more than one leader. It's not like Marcus Smart was saying, you guys can't talk, I'm going to do all the talking around here. There's plenty of opportunity. So I get the point, and I'd hope if I'm the Celtics that that's the case. But that sounds like a post-trade justification that you wouldn't have made if you had traded Malcolm Brogdon to the Clippers, right? I mean, if that was really part of the goal, then why did you try to trade Malcolm Brogdon first and not Marcus Smart, right? I mean, come on, I'm not buying that.
What do you think of just the trades have happened, you can't undo them, and if your mindset is correct that there isn't something big out there, because according to all reports and even seemingly right from Damian Lillard's mouth, like he's not coming to Boston. So if Brogdon is here and obviously is healthy after surgery, and is your sixth man once again, because I wouldn't expect him to jump into the starting lineup necessarily. So what do you like about this roster as it stands right now versus something other than durability, injury risk, all of that? Because they've certainly got a group of guys that come with that. Other than that, what would concern you about this group?
Well, I think the thing that I really do like about this team is the ability to space the floor. That's something that they've really, since Brad Stevens has moved into the front office, that's really been his big thing is finding guys who can space the floor, and that's what Porzingis does. I mean, he absolutely can do that, and then versatility. Because they can come out. I mean, if you've got Porzingis and Rob Williams playing together, man, that is an impressive front court on the defensive end, especially. That's a lot of length. And then if you're talking about in that lineup, you're talking about Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Derek White in the at the other three spots. That's a lot of length. That's a lot of that could be a really really imposing defensive team right there. So I there's a lot to be excited about. I don't mean to come on and just poo-poo everything the Celtics have done. But certainly the durability is a question, and that's you can't just ignore that. I think the other thing though is that what's been the Celtics' biggest problem the last 2 seasons? It's really when they fail to move the ball and they fail to share the ball, and in certain situations they get into this thing either when they're way up or when they're in tight situations where Tatum does the my turn and Jaylen Brown does the my turn and it's my turn, your turn, and you don't get a lot of good ball movement. They stop doing that. How did they solve that problem? How did they address that problem? By trading away their best passer? By Marcus Smart, whatever you want to say about him, he was the best passer on the roster. So I don't know that really solves that issue. So as long as you've got that, that's going to be the big thing that concerns me. Is that's they've got to get away from that. They've got to figure that out. And it's been 2 years of not figuring that out. And maybe trading Marcus Smart does. Maybe that's a way that you can put pressure on Tatum and Brown to say, look, we need you to be the ones who move the ball and not stop the ball the way that they often do late in games. So maybe that can be a solution there. But that would probably be my big worry, is that's their biggest problem, and they haven't really done anything to address it.
I don't think we've even mentioned the names Brissett and Blanton, 2 of the offseason additions that they've made. And I realize these are not, like you got to be a real basketball junkie and maybe even a daily fantasy player to be familiar with these guys and their contributions. But what do they fit in your mind? Like Brissett in general was someone I was excited about, and people a lot of the Twitter was like, you've never even heard of this guy. What do you mean well, I went to Syracuse. That's why I'm familiar with O'Shea Brissett. Otherwise, you might be right. Like I might not have an awareness. And then Blanton, I think can come in and serve a purpose. He's not going to be a high minutes guy, obviously, but how do you like these fits?
So a few years ago when Taco Fall was playing up in Maine, I went up and I spent a couple days up there, and they had like 2 games against Toronto's G League team, and O'Shea Brissett was playing for them. I remember watching him, and I was like, I'm no scout or anything. Everything that I think I know about players, I get from by talking to people who actually know what they're doing. But I watched Brissett and I was like, this guy's pretty good. And so I've kind of followed his career just because it stuck with me. And yeah, I mean, he's a very, very good defensive player, and he does bring a lot of energy and has the capacity to knock down shots too. So I thought he was a really good addition. I don't think Blanton really is going to play much. But Brissett, I think, is somebody who could and should crack the rotation, and for what they're paying him, I think that's a great addition. That they were looking for that kind of guy. I know Bates Diop, who signed with Phoenix. He was another guy that they were looking at, that kind of under the radar guy who could really be a pretty good contributor. And I think Brissett will come in and will play some meaningful minutes. I think he'll be part of the rotation. Hopefully through the playoffs.
Is the metaphorical hourglass, the sands of time dropping down at this point as we wait for the Jaylen Brown extension? Is this looming according to all reports? Is this going to, Supermax get done? And I don't know, maybe by the time this podcast is even published, or is there something meaningful that is delaying this in your eyes?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to get done. I think if you're the Celtics, you're trying to find a way to save as much as you can on this. There's parameters so it's got to be 6 years when you roll in the years that are left on his contract. So it'll be 1 year and then the additional after that. But for the Celtics, Rudy Gobert signed a supermax that wasn't a full supermax. I think he's the only guy who's done that. And I think the Celtics would like to maybe find ways to, as we've seen with the second apron, every $1 million that you can save, you got to try to do it. There's been sort of this rubber stamp in terms of, okay, there's a supermax here, just take the whole thing, and there hasn't been a whole lot of pushback from teams saying, well, maybe we should try to, instead of giving them the full 35%, which is what 35% of the cap, which is where you're eligible to start, why don't we make it 32? Why don't we negotiate that rather than just sort of rubber stamping it? So that can be the only thing. And I don't have any reporting that, I'm not saying that, but to me, that's the thing that's holding it up is, maybe the Celtics are trying to, try to find some ways to not make this the full supermax, to not make this the full almost $300 million, because that's going to be something that, and you look at it with Damian Lillard right now, right? I mean, he's going to make $60 million at age 37 under his current deal, because the Blazers just said, okay, supermax, there you go, take the whole thing. And rather than saying, well, wait a minute, why don't we try to make this a little more reasonable, because you're not going to be worth $60 million when you're 37. So, I think that's where this is that the Celtics are trying to find ways to make this a reasonable supermax rather than just a rubber stamp kind of thing.
So I wholeheartedly agree with you. If the two of us are sitting here and we are part of basketball operations, we're on the team side. What I've come back to a number of times on this show, whenever someone has brought this up, is if you're Jaylen Brown, who has felt openly disrespected by this city, this organization, maybe not the organization, but the fan base, there have been gripes. There have been things that have upset you over the years that he's probably still not beyond. And I'm not saying he should be in every way. It depends on, like, getting booed on draft night, get over it. Some of the stuff in terms of the makeup of the city and the racial, element, like, yeah, I'm not going to ever tell somebody, hey, get over that, but there are things obviously that are going on in his head that have made me, I don't know why he would ever take less than a supermax. He has never given me the vibe that he is a guy who would say, yeah, I'll work with you on this. I'll take a little bit less for the betterment of the organization and the second apron. And like, he's struck me as someone that's, no, I'm like, see that full supermax that he's getting, and he's getting rubber stamped, like you said. I want that too. I've earned it. I was all NBA. I'm eligible. Give it to me. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's, if I'm Jaylen Brown, that's probably what I'm saying back to the Celtics, even as they're saying, but what about, how about if we did this? How about if we did that? I'm sure if I'm Jaylen Brown, then I'm saying no. I mean, this is what I'm eligible for. I'm a top 15 player in the league. That's what I want. And, don't forget that he's also very involved with the union, and a lot of times when you get players who are involved with the union, they see it as, and it is. I'm not suggesting that it's not, but it is. It's important that they set a precedent that other players can benefit from, and I would be 100% sure that that's part of Jaylen Brown's logic, that even if he did say, okay, that makes sense what you're saying, but I've got to think about the players who come after me. That's most likely part of his thought process as well.
So we'll see. I mean, do you believe at least in one way or another, whether it's full supermax or something close to it, like you said, like the deal is going to get done.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's not good for Jaylen Brown to not sign this. It's not good for the Celtics to not sign it with him. So, they both have plenty of incentive to make sure this gets done. And it doesn't have to get done right away. And so, they can afford to do whatever dance they're doing. But it'll get done one way or the other.
Yeah, let's also not forget that the way it works in the NBA, it's a players' league as much as any other, more than any other, really. Like he could sign this and in 2 years say he just wants to be traded. I mean, look.
Yeah, that's right. There's nothing, no skin off his teeth, right?
Yeah. I mean, get. I'm not saying he will, but that's why I have no reservations about a deal getting done. Like, he'll just get his money, and it may be somebody else paying him down the road. But right now, you cash in. That's what you do. All right. Before we do get out of here, there was obviously more details that have come out at Summer League and over the course of this past week about this in-season tournament, something that you've written about for heavy.com. What I want to know, Sean, is, and I speak for, I think, some segment of fans and followers of the NBA, why should I care? Like, why should this in-season tournament mean anything to me?
Because Adam Silver really wants you to care. He really he's asking you, please care. It is a tough sell. They sort of modeled it on the Euro League. And what happens there, the big difference is that you've got all these different leagues in Europe, right? You've got the Turkish league and the Italian league, the Spanish league, and those teams don't play each other. Well, they have this season tournament where the best teams in Italy play the best teams in Turkey and the best teams in Germany, et cetera. And that's interesting. These are teams that wouldn't otherwise play each other.
Right.
It's not interesting to have, Charlotte and Orlando play each other and say, look, it's a tournament game. Well, it's not. It's still just Charlotte and Orlando. Come on. Yeah. But what Adam Silver's trying, what the goal here is that they get slaughtered in November and December because NFL is everything. And you look at the ratings and the NFL, a typical Sunday game, their best Sunday game is going to get 25 million viewers. The best NBA game in that November December range gets about 2, maybe 3 million viewers. So the NBA is up against it in terms of that. And Adam Silver's trying to find any way to generate some interest in the league. And this is really, it's harmless. It doesn't do any damage. And the only thing that it can do is possibly create a little bit extra attention. And that's good for the league. I'll tell you, Adam, the one thing that I'd say about it is, I did not think the in-season the play-in tournament, I thought that was going to be a disaster. I thought what are they doing? This is stupid. It's been really good, and it's been good for the league. It's been good for ratings. It's been, every measure that you'd want to make for it. It's been good. And so, I guess my stance on it would be, in the end, like, doubt Adam Silver at your peril, because he's done a lot of things that have proven to be right in the end.
Yeah, I guess with the whole, I agree with that, but I guess what I would say to the play-in tournament is, like, has it been good? Has it been successful by the measurements, the metrics that they would define success? Yes, absolutely. But I still, and this is sort of like the weird flip side of that, I still don't feel like it was even remotely necessary. Like it's still, yes, has it, I guess, improved the early stages of the playoff product? Fine, but this isn't like baseball when only 4 teams were getting to the playoffs and you start to add in wild cards and division winners, going way back, and it's like, all right, now we're giving more teams an opportunity when 3/4 of our league wasn't sniffing the postseason, and so we have to find a way to make it interesting. What you're doing, like, you already had more than half your league going to the playoffs, and now you are making it so that whatever the number is, 60% of the league or 65% of the league, or whatever the math is now in the mix. And I don't, again, like, who am I to like doubt something that has, as you said, openly worked? But I still watch it and I'm like, we didn't need to do this. Like, top 8 seeds were fine. There didn't need to be 10.
Fair. That's a fair point. But again, I think the goal was, and you could argue that this part didn't really work. You saw with the Mavericks, but to cut back on tanking, and I think it at least has cut back on it. In addition to other things that the league has done, but to cut back on tanking and create more late season interest in markets that it wouldn't in there. And so I think you've seen some of that. So again, it depends how you define the success of it, but to to kind of create that out of nothing, and to create it when they didn't even need to, like you say, and get the Lakers game when they played, I think who they played, Minnesota. That game was the number 2 game, so it was opening night, was the number 1 game, non-playoff game, and play-in doesn't count as playoffs,
which is also stupid, by the way.
Well, right. It's kind of crazy that they have these games that have stats that don't exist.
Yeah, like Jason Tatum's 50-point play-in game. Like you can't
never happened. Right,
you can't find it anywhere. Like it's not like part of his basketball reference page.
It's not right. Exactly. Right. Weird. And that's a little weird. Yeah. But but so the number 1 game last year though was opening night. I think it was Lakers and Warriors, and then the number 2 game was the Lakers playing game. Like and in terms of ratings, and so that was just a game that wasn't going to exist, and then did exist, and the second most people of the season watched it. So it's for something that they didn't need. I agree with you on that, but at least they came up with something that people bought into.
Well, in season champions. I hope I hope we still have the I hope they get rings. I hope we raise I hope we raise banners for this. You know what? Some crappy organization out there will raise, like I don't mean to pick on like the Sacramento Kings or whatever, but like if I see a play-in or a mid-season tournament, whatever they call this thing, an in-season tournament, championship banner go up to somebody's rafters, I swear to God.
Well, the important thing is that each player gets $500,000. I mean, that's and especially for the lower half of the roster.
For them, that doesn't mean anything for me or for an NBA fan.
No, right, absolutely, yes, yeah, right. But my point being that there'll be a care factor there that money brings.
You're going to start to have guys like resting for games leading up to the in-season tournament. Just to, you got to be fully available for this.
You got to load manage for the tournament. Oh man, what a nightmare that would be for Adam Silver.
Get ready. This is, what do you mean? Would be? Will be. It's absolutely going to happen. All right, we should go. You should get back to Vegas, and I should not talk the rest of the day because my voice sounds like crap. But Evan Valenti will rejoin us for next week. We'll see what we have in store for you. Either way, we promise it'll be good because we believe in this show. We have a lot of fun. Heavy.com's Sean Devaney. Sean, thanks so much for taking the time out in Vegas, and get back to your family, get back to the fun, and we'll talk to you again real soon for sure.
All right, thanks, Adam.
All right, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff for Celtics Beat. For Evan, who is still producing in the background, I'm Adam Kaufman. For Sean, we'll talk to you again next time here on Celtics Beat.
The CLNS Media Network is powered by FanDuel. Sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston and get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed.